Well, hey there, guys. Greetings and salutations, and welcome back to the channel for this installment of Open Mic, the show where the mic is open, the floor, as they would say, is yours. What do you want to talk about? That is what we are here to discuss tonight. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. Good to have you guys here joining me this evening. I hope you guys are having a good one on this day. That was the Oscar nomination day. Oscar nominations came out. It is the second most important day of the year when it comes to the movie industry, right? The most important day is obviously the Oscars themselves. But then after that, it's Oscar nomination day, when you find out who all got the big Oscar nominations. And as in every year, there are a couple of surprises, a couple of snubs. I thought we'd talk about two of the snubs in particular. Before we get on to your question. Now, by the way, if you guys are watching, if you're watching the John Campea show, this is Open Mic. On the John Campea show, normally the way you send in a question is by using the tip link. But here on the John Campea, or here on Open Mic, I should say, if you have a comment, observation, question, theory, or a topic you'd like me to discuss, go ahead and just use the super chat feature and send it in. And as long as I deem it appropriate to be read on the show, I will read it on the show. So you guys can just send in a question there. The super chats are open, and they will be for a bit. But before we get into that, I did want to touch on a couple of the snubs. The ones that I think are snubs and the ones that I think are difficult to call snubs. Let's start off, though, with this, okay? I want to, and yes, Mark W.'s Craven was snubbed for the worst film. How the Razzies didn't nominate Craven for worst film is beyond me, but that's besides the point. We're going to talk about the Oscars today. All right. So one of the big films that a lot of people are talking about today, and we touched on it a little bit on the John Campea show this morning, but I thought I'd go into it again here, was the documentary Superman about Christopher Reeve. I saw so many comments today, understandably so, that were pretty upset that Superman did not get nominated for Best Documentary. The films that did get nominated for Best Documentary are Black Box Diaries, No Other Land, Porcelain War, Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, and Sugarcane. Those were the films that got nominated for Best Documentary. And again, what to a lot of people was the best documentary of the year, Superman, didn't get nominated, and a lot of people got very upset, calling out snub, all that kind of stuff, and it's understandable. However, let me throw this out there, okay? And I'm not trying to be contrarian. I'm not trying to be any of that. I just want to throw this out there as a point of reference, okay? And, Rob and I talked about this a little bit this morning, but I want to touch on it again here. Out of all the films that have been nominated for Best Documentary, I have to admit to you guys, I've only seen one. I've only seen one of them. I saw Porcelain War. That's it. I didn't see Black Box Diary, No Other Land, Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, or Sugarcane. I didn't. I think Rob said he also only saw one. And when I was talking to some people online earlier, I said which ones, if we were going to bump one of these films from the list to make room for Superman, which one would you bump? I asked. And I only had a couple of those conversations, but what I found was that most people have not seen any of these films nominated for Best Documentary. My point is that, and I asked this question, is it reasonable for us to get up in arms about Superman not getting nominated for Best Documentary if we haven't seen the films that were nominated for Best Documentary? How are we, and I include myself in this, how are we in a position to say any one of the films that were nominated didn't deserve to get nominated? Because you can't say Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat didn't deserve to get nominated if you haven't seen Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat. You can't say that Superman deserved the nomination over Sugarcane if you haven't seen Sugarcane, if I haven't seen Sugarcane. So I get the general consensus out there that, and because I was right there with you. I was surprised that Superman did not get nominated, considering just how good that movie is. But I can't be upset about it because I've only seen one of these, Porcelain War, which was really good. I might have put Superman over it, but I haven't seen any of the other ones. So I would suggest, if you're somebody who hasn't, and most people haven't, if you're one of the many, 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 many people out there who has not seen any of these films nominated for Best Documentary, may I suggest that probably you shouldn't call it a snub that Superman didn't get a nomination, because you can't say that these other films didn't deserve it more. I can't say that these other films didn't deserve it more. So all we can say is that we really like Superman. And again, I admit, I was kind of surprised it didn't get nominated. I was surprised it didn't get nominated. Still. So there was that one. That was the big snub. But the other one that I want to talk about here is the snub of Denis Villeneuve not getting nominated for Best Director for Dune 2. Somebody at the Academy, I spoke to two people today who are voting members of the Academy. Neither of them were in the director's branch, but both of them were surprised that Denis Villeneuve's name was not on the nomination list. Both of which, when they saw that Denis Villeneuve's name was not on the nomination, they were both surprised. But so I have to talk to somebody who's on the voting board of the director's branch of the Academy, the branch that actually puts out the nominations for their category. And I got to ask somebody, how on earth did Denis Villeneuve not get nominated for Best Director? Because I'll tell you straight up, he should have won. There's a great argument to be made for Sean Baker, who directed Anora. There's a great argument to be made for Brady Colbert, or Cobert, however he pronounces that name, for The Brutalist. But I'm sorry, like, Dune 2 is, to me, the greatest film of the last 10 years. Not everybody agrees with me on that, and that's fine. But, I mean, that movie is a cinematic masterpiece. Every image, every sound, every word, all crafted together by a maestro. How did not? And listen, I don't want to create a big pile-on Emilia Perez, but that movie just isn't good. And I am absolutely flabbergasted how the director, I don't know how to pronounce the director's last name, Audiard? I'm not really sure how to pronounce Jacques' last name, so forgive me. But how did Jacques Audiard get nominated for Best Director for this? I'm not saying they're a bad director. I'm not even saying Emilia Perez is a bad movie. I'm not. I'm just saying it's not that good. It certainly isn't good enough to be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. And it's certainly not good enough to garner 13 nominations. Some of the nominations were well-deserved. I'm not going to take anything away from some of the nominations that they got, but I just don't get it how Denis Villeneuve crafted that cinematic masterpiece. Because I guarantee you, people are going to be talking about Dune 2 long after they've forgotten all about Emilia Perez. And again, listen, I'm not taking anything away from the fact that Emilia Perez, and there are some people going, well, it only got nominated because it talked about these topics and these themes. No, that's bullshit. You know why I know that's bullshit? Because there have been a lot of films that cover those topics and themes, and they don't get any Oscar buzz. They get no part of the conversation, right? It's not just, like, it's one thing to want to tackle and address big issues and big topics in a movie that you're doing. That's great. But you still have to make a really good movie around it. You have to make a great, engaging film out of it. And Emilia Perez simply did not do that, in my opinion. So this is one. Now, listen, most of the nominations today I have no problem with, but I think those two are the ones that I've heard most get the most conversation. The one about Superman not getting nominated for Best Documentary, and obviously the one of Denis Villeneuve not getting nominated for Best Director. It's completely beside me. I am, again, I said this on the John Campea show earlier today. I'll say it again here. It's not as egregious or as bad as the year that Ben Affleck didn't get nominated for Best Director for Argo, when in that same year he won Best Director at the Directors Guild, and I think the Golden Globes, and I think the Critics' Choice, and his movie won Best Picture. So despite the fact that Ben Affleck won the Directors Guild Award for Best Director of the Year, and his movie won the Oscar for Best Picture, Ben Affleck still didn't get nominated for, like, that one to me is worse than this. That one to me is worse than this. But yeah. And also the director for Conclave. I don't get Conclave. I mean, I think that pretty much rules out that Conclave is going to win. It should win. I mean, Dune 2 should win, but it's not going to. So out of all the films remaining that have a shot at winning, I think Conclave should be, but it's probably out of it since they didn't even put up the director. Wouldn't even put up the director for it. So anyway, those are my two. Now listen, there are a lot of nominations in a lot of categories, and they're never going to line up entirely with what we think those nominations should be. That's fair enough, right? But this one hurts. This one's hard to swallow. This one of Denis Villeneuve not getting nominated for Best Director for Dune 2. This one is a difficult one to swallow, but anyway, guys, thoughts from you. What do you think about it? Were there any big surprises from the nominations to you? Either surprises of things that were there or surprises from things that weren't there? Were there other things that you would consider to be a snub that didn't happen there? If you do, jump into the super chats and let me know. All right, guys. With that down and out of the way, let's get to the whole reason we're here, shall we? Which is taking your live comments and questions. So let's not waste any more time and let's get right into it, shall we? We're going to start off here with Bro, who just put in a super chat just to be supportive. Thank you, bro. I appreciate that very much. Rav writes, visiting California first time, and Universal and Disney first time. Listen, I'm going to reserve my commentary about Disneyland. I will say this. Everybody knows my attitude about Disneyland, but even as somebody who's got a real thing about Disneyland, even I will say, if you have never been to Disneyland, I do think you need to go at least once. I do. I mean, even as somebody who really deplores Disney, in Disneyland, I would say it's something you should do at least once. So there's that. Universal Studios Hollywood, I think, is a blast. I think you get a much better value for your dollar at Universal. Just make sure you do the studio tour, the tram tour. Make sure you do that, and I think you're going to have a good time. All right. Have fun, Ray. Or Rav. Next up, Bro writes in again and says, 1 of 3. Oh, 1 of 3. Okay, here we go. Hey, John, love the show. Thank you. A while back on an Ask Me Anything, I asked you what your favorite film genre was, and you replied you didn't have one, but you lean towards sci-fi. All right. For me, sci-fi is the greatest literary and film genre we have for its ability to speculate and create discourse about big questions of humanity and existential issues we may face. The sci-fi genre for me is best expressed in film by depicting questions of the future today. What does the sci-fi genre mean to you, and what about it makes you gravitate more towards it? Thanks. Well, I mean, here's the thing, bro. I love that you're saying, you appreciate sci-fi because it has the ability to speculate and to create discourse about big questions of humanity and existential issues. But I would say this, a well-made film of any genre can do that. Those aren't things that are exclusively reserved for the sci-fi genre, I mean, sci-fi genre gives you an interesting way to pose those questions, but there are really, really great questions or really, really great films in a variety of different genres that can tackle and address those questions just as well as something in sci-fi does. The thing, though, about sci-fi that has me lean towards, again, I'm a fan of just about every genre, but I do have a particular place in my heart for sci-fi and fantasy, but is I'm trying to figure out how to word this. You actually get to visualize things you imagine, right? You get a movie like, I don't know, something like a Star Wars film for argument's sake, or a Star Trek or whatever, but it's that you get to put into a visual medium something we can only imagine, things we can only see in our mind's eye, right? Because there are certain things in sci-fi movies that we'll never get to see with our eyes, but in the form of the movies or TV, in some cases, you get to visualize those things and see them again. And within good sci-fi is going to tackle the same types of questions and whatever that other genres can as well, but they do them in a different medium, in a different container, if you will. And so for me, I think the reason I gravitate a little bit more towards sci-fi is just, it does what other genres can't do. It can visualize the things that have before that and without that are exclusively trapped in just our imaginations. And to see it brought to life and expressed in that way, and to become the vehicles, if you will, for deeper questions and studies of our own humanity and stuff like that. I think it just makes it a really fun way to engage with those. So anyway, thank you, brah. Appreciate you sending that in, man. And I love the question. All right. Next up, we've got Rav again, who writes, I know with me, when reviews come out, people hate a movie, I like it more. When people love a movie, I usually don't like it as much. I don't believe you. I don't think that's true at all. You know why? You know why? Because of this. This is the thing about film fans that drives me nuts, about our film community. When like there's a movie out and somebody says, the critics didn't like it. What do you mean the critics didn't like it? Like if I go on to IMDb, it looks like, even on a movie that a lot of us consider bad, it'll say that one, still 48% of the critics liked it. That's nearly half the critics that like it. So who do you mean when you say the critics didn't like it? Because when you say the critics didn't like it, that's basically implying every single movie critic didn't like it. No, as a matter of fact, a full third of them did, or nearly half of them did, or whatever. So when you say, when people say they don't like it, I have to challenge you and say, what people? What people? People liked Avengers Endgame or Avengers Infinity War. Did you not like it? People didn't like Madam Web. Did you like it? But also, it's a misnomer to use that term when people don't like something. What people? Which people are you talking about? Certain specific people? Anyway, that's just kind of my thing. But yeah, I find when people, that's why I'm saying I don't believe you. I'm not saying you're lying, Rav. I'm saying I think if you really examine it, if you made a list for me of the 10 films that you thought were the best films this year, I bet you if we went on to like Rotten Tomatoes, we would find that a lot of people like those movies. And if you made a list of the 10 films you hated the most, I bet if we went to Rotten Tomatoes, we'd find a lot of people that didn't like them too. So I'm just gonna throw that out there. All right. Next up, we've got Mighty Tank 1, who writes, good evening, John. Marvel still has untitled Marvel films slated for February 13th, 2026 and November 6th, 2026. Are these still happening? I have no idea. I do know, I believe they're still, because we just talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but they're holding dates. I think they still tentatively have holding dates on those times. What they would be, I'm not sure. My guess is the February one is going to be Spider-Man. That's my guess. The February 13th is going to be Spider-Man. Again, is my guess. And I don't know what November 26th is. So I would have to I'd have to take a look at that. But other than that, I have no idea. I know you know just as much as I do on that one. So don't know yet. We'll have to wait and see. But I would expect, especially for that February one, some announcements pretty damn quick because it's only like 13 months away. So we'll find out if they're still going to hold something on there or not. All right. Next up, Boone Lee Tan writes, shouldn't noms be disqualified if names are to be determined? I have no idea what you mean by that. Shouldn't noms be disqualified if names are TB? What is that? I have no idea what you mean by that, Boone. I have no clue. Like what was nominated that is TBD? Yeah, again, sorry, man. Please, if you're going to send in a question, make sure you read it over and say, would somebody reading this for the first time who isn't me, is understandable to somebody who's reading? Because oh, you're saying the producers listed as to be determined. Oh, that has nothing to do with whether so somebody in the live chat is saying that during the announcements for Best Picture, they listed that the producers are to be determined. Okay. No, because who the listed credited producers are have no bearing on whether the film was the best film of the year or not, right? Now, there's a lot of different interconnecting rules and red tape that people have to go through to figure out who exactly gets the credit. Sometimes there's actually legal battles over who exactly gets the producer credits, right? So, but again, that has nothing to do with whether or not the movie is the best film of the year. So yeah, I don't believe, why should a movie be disqualified just because you can't figure out behind the scenes who should be the listed producer or not? That's irrelevant. To me, that's completely irrelevant. So it doesn't really matter. All right. Next up. We did that one from Bra. Tim writes, new episode of Severance just came out and it's amazing. I have not seen episode 2 yet. I'll probably get around to watching it tomorrow, but I know episode 1 was really good. It was a really, really good return to form in episode 1. All right. Matty Tank 1 writes, what's more likely? We get 23 Jump Street or Free Guy 2? I do not think we're ever going to get 23 Jump Street, but I would say it's more likely that we get 23 Jump Street because I don't believe there's any chance in hell we're ever getting Free Guy 2. Let me be more specific. I don't think there's any chance in hell we're ever going to get a proper Free Guy 2 with Sean Levy directing and Ryan Reynolds starring. I am pretty much positive that is never going to happen. I would love it. I love Free Guy, man. I think that movie is the tits. I love it. But it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. So again, I don't think 23 Jump Street's ever going to happen either, but I'd say 23 Jump Street has like a 12% chance of happening. Whereas with Free Guy 2, I think that to be generous, that has like a 2% chance of happening. So even though I would love to see it, man. All right. Thanks for that, Mighty Tank. Next up, Simon Section sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Simon, for supporting us on that level, man. Appreciate that, dude. And Simon writes, part 1, sorry if I misled you with my wordplay on the last open mic regarding a new Daredevil Born Again trailer. I was trying to compare it to the Echo trailer. It looked good, but it didn't deliver when being viewed. I agree with that. Part 2, I would like to see a cameo from Luke Cage or Spider-Man, anything to bridge the gap between the Netflix series and the MCU with no incident, no pun intended. Bringing in Luke Cage doesn't do that. Right? If you're saying you want to see a certain cameo to bridge with the rest of the MCU, bringing in Luke Cage doesn't do that because Luke Cage was a Netflix thing. Mike Coulter, I don't believe, is returning anyway, so I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think there's any chance in hell we see Spider-Man in it. They might do a flashback to the events of No Way Home because, of course, Matt was in that. But I don't think there's any chance that we'll see Spider-Man in a Netflix or in a Disney Plus series. So I would say no to either of those. But yeah, listen, that's why I always say the whole Echo thing, right? Because you're right. The Echo trailers looked really good. And I didn't end up liking the Echo series at all. But that's why I'm always quick to point out when we see a trailer that I think is bad, I always say, but hey, we've seen lots of bad trailers to movies or shows that ended up being pretty damn good. And when I see a trailer that's great, I'm always quick to point out, now how? Hey, listen, the movie may suck. We're only talking about the trailer. The movie may suck, but hey, this is great. So yeah, I try not to get too excited when a trailer's amazing. And when I do get excited, I try to confine my excitement just to the trailer itself. Like I'm so stoked, this trailer's amazing, but I'm only talking about the trailer. I don't know if the movie's going to be good, but the trailer's amazing, right? So yes, you're right. We do sometimes get great trailers and they end up being crappy things. Echo is a pretty good example of that, Simon. Anyway, Simon, thank you again for supporting us on that level, man. That was really generous of you. Appreciate that very much, dude. All right. Next up, we got Isaac Sanchez, who writes, since you mentioned what Wallace and Gromit Vengeance Most Foul got nominated, what do you like about Aardman animations? I just think it's the writing. They're clever. They have that cheeky English sensibility about them that I really like. And it's not just confined to them either. That cheeky English sensibilities is stuff I like in a lot of different things. It reminds me, you know what a lot of their style reminds me of? Fawlty Towers. For any of you who used to watch or who saw when you were a kid and watching the reruns, Fawlty Towers. That's something that Aardman's writing in their style. It's not the animation style that wins me over. Like that's not what I find attractive. The medium's the medium, whatever. It's just that the sensibilities that they have that I find really charming and really fun. Anyway, thanks for that, Isaac. Next up, Chino writes, tell me, John, where's all the marketing for Cap 4? Have you been living under a rock? I'm actually tired of all the Cap 4 marketing. Hell, just yesterday too, we're getting new TV spots practically weekly. We've had a number of trailers. I see billboards all over the place. Cap 4 ads pop up in my YouTube stream. And just the other day, we just did a big thing about the new popcorn buckets, the new special drink things. I mean, the marketing for Cap 4 is all over the place, which is part of the reason why the advanced ticket sales are pretty strong. This movie's they're saying it's gonna open between $90 and $95 million opening weekend. I have my doubts that it'll open that big, but that's what they're saying. So, and the advanced tickets they're saying have been pretty strong. So yeah, I there's been a lot of marketing for it. That doesn't mean that's neither good nor bad. I'm just saying I've seen a lot of marketing for it. Anyway. All right. Next up, Amin writes, I just want to find somebody who actually thought Emilia Perez was great and to explain to me why. Can't even find a YouTube video on it. Well, here's the thing. Nobody owes you an explanation as to why they like something. Nobody owes me an explanation as to why they like something. You know, it's just a matter of, did it work for them? You know, I watched Emilia Perez, did not work for me. And now I don't have to justify that to anybody. I don't have to explain myself to anybody, nor should another person who's enjoys film, should they have to explain themselves if they do like something, right? And again, I'm with you, man. Emilia Perez, I don't see it. I don't get it. I don't think it's a very good film. But there are clearly others who do, and more power to them, man. But I certainly do not. You know, they may say the music really works for them. I didn't find that the music worked all that well. They may say that the dialogue felt engaging. Okay, but I didn't. They might say the little bits of humor in there really worked. Okay, but I didn't find that it worked. They may say this or that. But again, all they're saying is that something that did not work for us worked for them. And just leave it at that, I guess. All right, thanks for that, Amin. Appreciate that. Next up. Ever Nolasco Films writes, Do you think they'll use the iconic Daredevil intro music in the new show? There's nothing iconic about the Daredevil intro music. I watched every episode multiple times. I couldn't hum one bar of the Daredevil music. I actually don't find the music to be all that iconic because I don't even remember it. Now, there are a lot of shows I can remember the tunes for it, and Daredevil is amazing, but that doesn't mean everything about it was amazing. I don't think the intro music was all that good, to be honest with you. But still, it does bring up an interesting question. Because Daredevil was not going to be the same Daredevil from the Netflix show. I remember people used to argue with me about it, and then it turned out I was right. Daredevil was not going to be the same Daredevil from Netflix. They were going to keep using Charlie Cox, and yes, they were getting Vincent D'Onofrio, but it was going to be a different Daredevil. And then they shot it, and then Kevin Feige said, this isn't good. Bob Iger came back and said, well, you have the authority now to do whatever you want with it. And Kevin Feige said, we're going back to basically square one. And now we are going to do it as a part of the Netflix universe. So here's why the question is interesting, because it was going to be a completely new show. And so it clearly would have had new music. But since it is now kind of season 4, they're not calling it Daredevil season 4, but it's kind of like Daredevil season 4. There's probably a good chance they use the same music. Again, I don't agree that it's iconic remotely. I don't even remember a single note of it, but if it was so iconic, I would have remembered it, especially since I love the show so much. But I do think there's probably a good chance that they continue to use it. All right, guys. We are going to take a quick break here. We still got a bunch of questions we're going to get to and get through here. But before we do, we're going to take a moment here and thank a couple of sponsors of this episode of Open Mic, our friends at PrizePicks and BetterHelp. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, PrizePicks. Are you guys like me, both a movie and a sports fan? Well, if so, then you know that the playoffs are here and it's now or never. If you love football and want to add some real excitement to the games, let me tell you about PrizePicks, the best place for your daily fantasy sports. So here's how it works. It's super simple. You just pick more or less on player projections. Think Patrick Mahomes will throw more than 1.5 touchdowns this week, or maybe Lamar Jackson will get over 250 passing yards. Make your picks in less than a minute and take your shot at winning up to 1,000 times your cash. Ann and I have been having a blast using PrizePicks every weekend. It's simple, it's fun, and it just makes watching the games that much more exciting. Plus, PrizePicks puts you first. With easy, fast, secure withdrawals, you can get your winnings in as little as 15 minutes, and they make deposits even easier. And right now, if you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So don't wait. Download the app today and use the code Campea to get $50 instantly after playing your first $5 lineup. That's right, play for just $5 and you get a $50 bonus instantly. PrizePicks, run your game. Guys, we want to thank a sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp. You know, every January is like a blank slate, 365 pages waiting for you to fill them in. Perhaps it's time to rewrite a chapter that's been holding you back. Life isn't about resolutions that fade, it's about becoming the author of your own life story. And in writing that story, therapy can be your trusted editorial partner, helping you craft meaningful chapters, build resilience, and empower you to live the life that you've always envisioned. Therapy can help you learn positive coping skills, set boundaries, and become your best self. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp offers fully online therapy, making it affordable and convenient. With over 30,000 licensed therapists specializing in diverse needs, you can find somebody who truly understands your story. You can even switch therapists anytime at no extra cost. You know, I often hear from some of our viewers who talk about having some real struggles and challenges over the last couple of years. Well, listen, we commit ourselves to getting more physically strong and healthy by going to the gym. It's time for us to commit to getting more mentally and emotionally strong by getting involved in therapy. So write your story with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Campea today and get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at PrizePicks and BetterHelp for sponsoring today's episode of Open Mic. All right, guys. With that down, during the break, I turned off Super Chats. So Super Chats have now been turned off. Thank you to everybody who sent them in. So let's get on to answering all those questions that got sent in before we had to turn them off, shall we? The next one up we've got is Dwayne. And Dwayne writes, John, do you think the Academy just didn't like Dune as much as we did? Not just a recency bias thing. I only asked since it's still got 5 noms, so they must have had it in mind while nominating it. Well, there's a couple things to keep in mind here. Number one, the entire Academy doesn't nominate the films, right? Each category is voted on by a unique separate branch of the Academy. So you have like the actors branch, the writers branch, the directors branch, the music branch, on and on and on and on, right? And it's the individual branches that put forth the nominations for the Academy Awards. And then once the nominations are out, then the whole Academy will vote on them. I just wanted to point that out. Anyway, no, I see, here's the thing. I know a number of people who are voting members of the Academy. And I remember when Dune 2 came out, they lost their freaking minds. They lost their freaking minds. Oh, they loved it. I mean, I can't speak, obviously, for all like 7,000 voting members of the Academy. I can't obviously speak for all of them at all. But I'm just saying, like, the small little tiny sample size that I had of the people, they freaking love that movie at the time. So, yeah, to me, it is... Now, look, if Dune came out last week, do I think that guarantees it wins Best Picture and Denis Villeneuve wins Best Director? No, not necessarily. Of course not. But it would have gotten a lot more buzz, and people would have been talking about it a lot more. Now, remember, Dune 2 was originally supposed to come out in Oscar season of 2023. And I'm telling you, Oppenheimer should thank their lucky stars and whatever gods they worship that it moved, because they wouldn't have won as many Oscars as they did if Dune 2 had come out at the same time. Now, obviously, that's all subjective and up for debate, but I stand by that. And I think if Dune 2, now they didn't want to delay Dune 2 another full year. The movie was done. It was in the box. They already started getting ready. Getting ready to... they've already started the promotion, the marketing. They started dropping dollars on marketing. They didn't want to wait a full year to have it come out in Oscar season. I'm just saying, I guarantee you that if Dune 2 came out in November or December of this past November, December, you'd be seeing a lot more Dune 2 peppered all over these nominations. I absolutely 100% guaranteed it. But anyway, all right. Thanks for the question, Dwayne. And it's a fair question to raise, Dwayne. It's a totally fair question to raise. All right, next up. Dan V900 writes, I don't know anyone who liked Emilia Perez. I'll be honest with you. I don't either. I literally have not talked to a single person that liked it. Anyway, I don't get how it is such an Oscar darling. The release date hurt Dune ultimately, and it didn't for Everything Everywhere All at Once. I'm not surprised. Yeah, well, we talked about that earlier today, because last year or the other year, Everything Everywhere All at Once was one of those films that opened early in the year and yet was able to win Best Picture. That, though, is what's called the exception bias, or the exception fallacy, right? It's the whole idea that because it happened once, that means it's not a real thing. And again, that's not true at all. It's the exception, because it's very rare. It happens, yes, but it is very rare that a film that gets released early in the year goes on to win. I gave the example today. I make the comparison of a basketball player taking a shot from half court. That's extremely not advisable. Like, unless the clock's running down and there's like 1 second left and you got to heave one up, sure. But a basketball player's coming down to court and then heaving it up from half court, that's a stupid decision because they hardly ever go in. Now, somebody can say, I watched a game last year and Steph Curry did that. He heaved it up from center court and it went in. Okay, yeah, that did happen. But it's such a small chance of success. It's such a small percentage that something like that is successful. you can't just take an exception and then build your belief around the exception. And Everything Everywhere All at Once was just that. It wasn't an exception. So anyway, there's a discussion going on in there saying, wasn't Dune 2 pushed not because it wasn't finished, but because of the strike? Yeah, that's exactly why Dune 2 got pushed. It got pushed because the strikes were on, and as a part of the strikes, actors weren't allowed to go out and promote the film. And when you're a film like Dune 2 that has actors like Josh Brolin, Rebecca Ferguson, Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Javier Bardem, like when you're a movie, Christopher Walken, when you're a movie that has all these megastars, you want them to be able to go out and promote the film. And yes, that is why they delayed it. But again, they didn't want to delay it a full year, so they put it out earlier in the year. All right. By the way, thanks for that question, Dan V. Appreciate it. All right, next up, Dan V. also writes, Challengers being shut out is ridiculous, especially when editing and score were layups for the film. I'm expecting Emilia Perez to win Best Picture, sadly. I actually don't think it will. It definitely has a shot. I don't think it will. As far as Challengers goes, I think it was a very good movie. It wasn't the movie I was expecting, but it was a very good movie. And I did expect to see it get a couple of nominations. But to be honest with you, I don't think it was a layup for any of it. I really don't. Like, there's no one category personally that I thought Challenger should definitely get nominated here over the other things. I didn't have one. I'm just kind of surprised that out of all the categories where I thought it might have had a shot, that maybe it might have gotten one or two, but it didn't happen. But hey, listen, there's a lot of great films that don't get Oscar nominations. It's very, very hard to get an Oscar nomination. So, it is what it is. All right. Orange Hand writes, thoughts on the 2000 Dune miniseries and 2003 Children of Dune. I quite like the sequel, and I think Ian McNeese's Baron is better than Skarsgård. I don't agree. The 2000, Children of Dune, I thought was terrible. The 2000 version, though, with William Hurt, the guy who did play Thunderbolt Ross in the MCU until he tragically passed away last year or 2 years ago, until we tragically lost William Hurt. William Hurt was Duke Leto Atreides. He played Paul's father in that. At the time, I actually liked the sci-fi, because it was on Sci-Fi, if I'm not mistaken. It was on the Sci-Fi Network. At the time, I thought I quite liked it. Here's the funny thing. After my wife Anne saw the first Dune movie, like with Timothée Chalamet, and it became like her second favorite movie of all time, I was like, well, then we should sit down and watch the 2000 miniseries so you can see what's going to happen later on. She goes, yeah. And I remember liking it very much 25 years ago. So I popped it on, we sat down, and I was like, oh, this is actually pretty rough. This is actually pretty rough. And my wife was looking at me and was like, John, you said this was good. I'm like, it hit different, honey. It hit different 25 years ago. So yeah, but I remember but I did not like Children of Dune personally, but that's just me. All right. Thanks for that, Orange Hand. Next up, Blake Wilson sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Blake. Appreciate that, man. And Blake writes, hey, John, I have a theory as to why Denis got snubbed. I think it's because many members of the Academy who are old have an unconscious bias against sci-fi films because they grew up at a time when sci-fi wasn't taken seriously. Nope, that's not remotely true. You got to remember that the Academy does not make the nominees list. The nominations for Best Director was put together by the director's branch. And directors love sci-fi. Directors love sci-fi. So, and you then have to justify, well, how did Peter Jackson win Best Director of the Year for something like Lord of the Rings? Or other directors who have directed sci-fi things get nominated. It really isn't. And again, you have to remember that it's not, and the Academy has modernized a lot, especially in the last 5 years. The Academy has modernized a lot, and they've brought in, remember I was saying 7,000 voting members. Well, guess what? They've added a whole new flood of new younger members into it, like in the thousands. So it's really not like that anymore. And besides, again, you have to remember that the Academy does not make the nominees list. The director's branch of the Academy puts together the nominations. The actor's branch of the Academy puts together the Best Actor nominations. The writing branch, the writers in the Academy, put together the writer's nomination. Then, once those nominations are all done, then the whole Academy will vote on the winners. But yeah, and the thing is, out of all filmmakers, I think it's directors that love sci-fi the most. So I really don't think that's the case. I don't think that's why they did that. Anyway, that's just me. All right. Thanks a lot for reporting the theory, though, Blake. Appreciate that, man. And again, thank you for supporting the channel on that level. It's really kind of you, man. All right, next up. Suthius writes, okay, Mr. Campea. A24 or Blumhouse, which do you like more? Well, I mean, they both make some great movies. They both make some duds. I don't know. I mean, I like them both. Look, I like that they're both so unique in their vision. A24 make certain kind of films. Blumhouse makes certain kind of films. Both of them make some great ones. Both of them have made some awful ones. I guess if I had to say, I think if you took me to a movie theater and said, okay, in this theater, there's going to be a new A24 film that you don't know anything about. And behind that door in that other theater is a new Blumhouse movie you don't know anything about. I guess I might go into the Blumhouse one. I think I'll go into the Blumhouse. Yeah, I'll go into the Blumhouse one, but I'm not sure. But all I know is that both have done a great job of making lower budget films and making some really big winners out of them. That's for sure. All right. Next up. CJ Rebirth writes, so happy Ariana Grande got a nomination for Wicked. I am too, because she is spectacular. Like, I am not an Ariana Grande fan. And I didn't believe in her. But man, she kills it in that movie, and I give her all the kudos in the world. The one asterisk, the one gray cloud hanging over her nomination is it's absolute category fraud. It's absolute category fraud. Ariana Grande should not be nominated for Best Supporting Actress because she's not a supporting actress in the movie. She's just not. She's a lead. She has every minute of screen time that Cynthia Erivo has. She has every line of dialogue that Cynthia Erivo has. She is featured on every poster like Cynthia Erivo is. And Cynthia Erivo is properly categorized as a lead. Ariana Grande was the lead too. It's absolute category fraud that they put her. And here's why category fraud is so bad. Because by Ariana Grande, who fully deserved an Oscar nomination, she's got the wrong one. By putting Ariana Grande fraudulently in the supporting actress category, that means there was another actress who actually played a supporting role in a movie that would have gotten the honor of a lifetime of being nominated for an Academy Award, and that actress got robbed because of category fraud. And it's not Ariana Grande's fault. It's not Ariana Grande's fault. It's the studio's fault. It's the fact that the Oscars and the Academy needs to have clearly defined rules about what constitutes a lead performance and what constitutes a supporting performance. Because there is no way you can justify that Ariana Grande's Glinda was a supporting role in the film. It wasn't. She was a lead. She was clearly a lead. And yeah, so again, I'm thrilled for Ariana because she carried that movie. She's so good in it. She's fantastic. And Cynthia Erivo was as well. So I'm thrilled she got nominated. I really am. It just bothers me that they had to commit category fraud to do it and rob some other actress of the honor of her professional lifetime to get an Academy Award nomination because they didn't want to put Cynthia and Ariana. Listen, if you're going to just say we can put any actress in any category we want, then why the fuck have two separate categories? Why have two separate categories? What's the point? What's the point in having two categories if just a studio can say, we're going to say, we don't really think, I don't know, what's a good example of this? You know what? We think Adrian Brody's going to win Best Lead Actor, and we really think Ralph Fiennes should get an Oscar. So we're going to say Ralph Fiennes. We're going to put Ralph Fiennes in the Best Supporting Actor category. But he's the lead. Yeah, well, we're just going to put him. If you can just do that, what's the point of having two categories? Actors will tell you there's a very different approach you bring to a role when you are a lead character versus to what you know you need to bring to the role when it's a supporting character. And I think it's good that the Academy has two separate categories for that. I think that's a good thing, but it becomes pointless unless you actually have rules about who goes into this one and who goes into this one. Otherwise, just get rid of the distinction. Just get rid of the second category. Just have a Best Actor and Best Actress. Whether they're lead, supporting, whatever, who cares? Just have one Best Actor, one Best Actress, and be done with it. If you're not actually going to make the distinction, then why have the distinction? Anyway, but yes, CJ Rebirth. Other than that, I am actually very happy for Ariana Grande getting a nomination. All right. Julius Wyatt writes, shame Denis' only Oscar director nom is Arrival. Oh, did he get nominated for that? Well, listen, first of all, there are a lot of directors that would kill to have any director nominations. The fact that Denis got one already is good, but he really did deserve one for this one. He really deserved one for Dune 2. Anyway, Blake Wilson writes, I think some members of the Academy don't see Dune Part 2 as a stunning work of art, which it is, but rather just some guy riding a worm. I don't know, that sounds snobby, but that's just me. Here's the thing, Blake. I actually know members of the Voting Academy. I've never heard one. Now, I don't know all 7,000 to 8,000 of them, but I've never heard one member of the Voting Academy that I know say that. And I would caution against making up things that other people think when you don't know those people. I think that's a dangerous, dangerous thing to do. Now, if you do happen to know personally voting members of the Academy and they told you, I just see Dune as some guy riding a worm, well, then you're totally justified in saying what you're saying. But again, I know a number of voting members of the Academy and they loved it. None of them said it's just some movie of a guy riding a worm. Now, again, there's 7,000 to 8,000 of these people. And no movie is for everybody. I'm sure there are members of the Academy who didn't like The Brutalist. I'm sure there are members of the Academy who didn't like Emilia Perez. I'm sure there are members of the Academy who didn't like Conclave. That's the beautiful thing about the art, is it hits us all in different ways. So I'm sure there are voting members of the Academy who didn't like Dune 2. Absolutely, 100%. True of every movie. But I don't think there's some collective mind thing that they all share, hive mind that they share on that. You know what I'm saying, Blake? Anyway. All right. Thanks for that, man. Next up, Remy D writes, what do you think of the Netflix movie Carry On? Also, are you going to visit Epic Universe? I don't know what Epic Universe is. So that aside, I liked Carry On. Now, look, let me say this. There are a number of really big suspend your disbelief logic flaws in that movie. There really are. There's like, oh God, come on. How could that happen when that already happened? You know what I mean? But that aside, I got to tell you, man, I had fun. I had fun watching that. It was a good little movie. And listen, 99% of Netflix original films are total dog shit. But Carry On was pretty fun. I had a good time with it, to be honest with you, even though there were some pretty big logic flaws. All right. Next up, let's see. Manpreet writes, I think the biggest surprise was Sebastian Stan. I agree. Yeah. But it was a great performance. Like, whatever your politics are, I don't give a shit. The performance was really good. Jeremy Strong got nominated too for it. But again, I didn't actually think he'd get nominated. So good for Sebastian Stan. Good for him to get his Oscar nomination. All right. Cameron Ferris writes, how do you feel about the Netflix price change? When do you think the company will outprice the customer's price range? Yeah, so listen, this wasn't new. They did announce a while ago. I remember we talked about it on the show a month or two ago that they had announced they were going to be doing these big the new price increase, and they have now gone into effect. Let me just look up here what the prices are now. A Netflix price increase. Let's see. Okay, so the standard plan went up by $2.50 to $18 a month now. I remember when it was I remember when it was like around 12. Now it's 18. That went up by $2.50. All the plans went up. The ad-supported tier went up by $1, went up to $8 a month now. So that's even though you got to watch ads, it's now more expensive to watch the ads, which I don't get that. And their top of the line streaming thing will be $25 now. The 4K streaming thing. So that's up another $2 a month. Man, yeah. Look, they know they can just slowly keep turning up the heat. Now listen, I will say this. For $18 a month, I still believe, even at $18 a month, which is less than a gym membership, that the amount of stuff you get on Netflix, like I'm not talking about new content, I'm talking about the library, right? That the sheer volume of content you got on Netflix, I still contend $18 a month is not an unreasonable amount of money. For the number of hours of entertainment and engagement you get, that's not a bad value. But it is getting closer and closer to the threshold where it may not become a good value anymore. I think, and I could be wrong about this, I think $30 is around where the breaking point is going to be. I think right around $30. Once it gets up to about 30, I think you're going to see a lot of people go, you know what, I'm out. It's too much. I could be wrong about that. I'm just guessing because you asked me the question, so I'm just guessing, but I think it's probably going to be around there somewhere. All right. Next up. Patrick Hamilton writes, have you heard that they are finally going to release the Toxic Avenger this year? Yeah, I saw a news report on that they're finally going to do it. That's the one with Peter Dinklage, right? That they're finally going to do it. They're finally going to put it out. If I'm going to be honest, and I always try to be honest with you guys, I would be lying to you if I said I was excited about it. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not excited about it. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not curious about it and that I won't give it a chance. I will. I mean, anything with Peter Dinklage, I'm going to give a chance. But I would be fraudulent if I told you guys that I was super excited about it, because I'm not yet. But we'll see what it's able to do. All right. So you just got a couple more left here. Next up, we've got Mr. I, who writes part 1 of 2. Here's my tinfoil hat theory. The Academy is waiting for Denis Villeneuve to complete his Dune trilogy before nominating him for Best Director. No, that they don't do that. That's not actually true. Anyway, because if he can successfully adapt Dune Messiah, he'll deserve the nomination. Have a great night. No. Like, here's the thing. When you are a tiny, tiny, tiny voting body, like, say, the Hollywood Foreign Press that has like 100-something members, right? you can coordinate. That's one of the reasons why the Golden Globes have no credibility. But when there's only like 100-something people, when I can literally pick up my phone and create a group chat to everybody in the voting body of the Golden Globes, because there's only like 100 and some odd people in it, then you can start talking about that. Like maybe they arrange. But when you literally have a body as big as the Academy, 7,000 to 8,000 members, broken into individual disciplines and voting chapters and branches of the main group, that just really doesn't happen. Mr. I is saying they did that to Peter Jackson. No, they didn't. They did not do that to Peter Jackson. They just didn't think he deserved it the first time. They didn't think he deserved it the second time. And then Return of the King came out, which I think is one of the greatest achievements in cinematic history, Return of the King. And they did think he did, but they didn't say, you know what? Let's not give it to him just yet. Let's not give it to him for Two Towers. They did not do that to him. It just so happens that it worked out that he didn't win for the first two, but he did win for the third one, right? Which is the best of the three. So anyway, yeah, so no, it's not a coordinated effort. So everybody always tries to say it's a coordinated effort with the Academy. It's not. It really isn't. But sometimes it just works out in a weird way. Again, we're trying to make sense out of something that doesn't make sense. Denis Villeneuve not getting nominated to me does not make sense. But we shouldn't make up conspiracy theories about it. It's just that, the people who did the voting didn't feel the same way. It's no more and no less complicated than that, I think, at any rate, Mr. I. Anyway, thanks for sending that in, dude. All right. Final one of the day comes to us, at least I believe it's the final one of the day. Yes, it is. Comes to us from Alex Von Gollum, who writes, I always get Sandra Bullock and Julia Roberts mixed up when thinking about one of them. Do you have a pair of actors that tend to get mixed up? Earlier, I gasped when I saw Miss Bullock is 60. I felt old. Yeah, Sandra Bullock being 60 is crazy. So two actors, I don't get them mixed up as much anymore, but I used to get them mixed up all the time, and I don't know why. Dennis Quaid and Kurt Russell. I don't know why. I cannot explain to you why. I for the longest time would get those like, now was that Kurt Russell or Dennis Quaid in that way? I don't know why I can't justify it, but those are two that I would always get mixed up. And again, I have no explanation for it. I have no idea why. I got nothing. On that. But that's just, oh well. All right, guys. And that'll do it for tonight's installment of Open Mic. We were able to keep tonight to a good crisp hour. Good. That'll do it for tonight's Open Mic, guys. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your evening and just coming by and hanging out and talking about movies with me. I really appreciate it. Hey, guys, don't forget, the John Campea Show returns tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Also, I can say that, Rob is now back because he's almost all the way through doing True Noir. But starting Monday, Rob is going to be not every single week, but most weeks, Rob is going to start being on 4 days a week. Now that he's got his stuff done there. And we're going to actually have some shows for the first time in like almost 2 years where Rob and Chris are going to be on the shows together, which should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that. Now, that won't start tomorrow, but that will start next week. Anyway, so that's going to be kind of fun. Anyway, guys, that'll do it for me for tonight. Thanks so much for being here. My name is John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.